Captain Marcus Vorn stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Wanderer's Dream, his weathered hands gripping the command rail as he stared into the endless expanse of space. For 30 years, he had led his crew through the Outer Rim territories, mapping new worlds and establishing peaceful contact with alien civilizations. They were explorers, not conquerors, carrying the banner of the Human Colonial Federation across the stars. The Wanderer's Dream was home to 200 souls, all descendants of the great exodus that had scattered humanity across the galaxy 60,000 years ago. Like most humans of his generation, Marcus had grown up believing that Earth was nothing more than a legend, a mythical birth world lost to time and cosmic disaster. "Captain," called out Communications Officer Thane Morrison from his station, his voice cutting through the bridge's quiet hum. "I'm picking up something strange. It's an old frequency, really old. The signal pattern matches historical records from the archives." Marcus turned, intrigued. The ship's archives contained fragments of ancient human history, including communication, protocols from the time before the Great Exodus. "Can you clean it up?" Thane's fingers danced across his console, running the signal through multiple filters and enhancement protocols. The static gradually cleared, revealing a voice speaking in Old Terran, the ancient language of Earth. The words were formal, ceremonial, as if recorded for posterity. "To all children of Terra who hear this message," the voice began, "this is Archive Keeper Lydia Ashworth, broadcasting from Earth Command in the year 2387. If you are receiving this transmission, it means our contingency protocols have been activated. Earth survives, but it is no longer ours." The bridge fell silent. Even the background hum of the ship's system seemed to fade as the crew absorbed the impossible words. Earth existed, their legendary homeworld was real, and someone had been trying to reach them. The message continued. 60,000 years ago, we made the difficult decision to send our people to the stars. The Zephyrian Empire had claimed our world, and though they allowed us to coexist, we knew that true freedom lay among the distant suns. We left behind technological seeds hidden throughout your ships, waiting for the day you might choose to return. Marcus exchanged glances with his first officer, Lieutenant Commander Jasper Knox, whose normally calm demeanor showed cracks of amazement. This changed everything they thought they knew about their origins and purpose. "The Zephyrians are not evil," the recording explained. "They are highly advanced, peaceful in their own way, but they view Earth as their rightful domain. They have transformed our world into something beautiful but alien. Cities of crystal and light rise where our ancestors once walked. They have no memory of us, believing humanity to be an extinct primitive species that vanished into legend." Navigation Officer Zara Blackstone stepped forward, her dark eyes reflecting the star field beyond the viewport. She had spent her entire career studying ancient star charts and navigation techniques, always wondering about the gaps in human history. "Captain, if this is real, we have the coordinates. The signal is coming from the Sol system, exactly where the old legends placed Earth." The message reached its conclusion. "We leave this choice to you, our children among the stars. You have built new lives, new civilizations. You owe nothing to a world you have never seen. But if you choose to return, know that you carry within your ships the tools of reclamation. The genetic locks will respond to your presence. The ancient technologies will awaken. Earth remembers her children even if others have forgotten." As the transmission ended, Marcus found himself facing the most important decision of his life. Around him, his crew waited in anticipation. They were scientists, explorers, diplomats. They had spent decades building bridges between species, fostering understanding and cooperation throughout the galaxy, but now they faced a choice that could define the future of humanity itself. "Sir," Thane reported, "I'm detecting similar signals being received by human vessels throughout this sector. The message is reaching every human ship in range." Marcus nodded slowly. The decision would not be his alone. Across the galaxy, human captains and crews were hearing the same impossible message, learning that their mythical homeworld not only existed, but was calling them back. Some would choose to remain in their peaceful colonies. Others would feel the ancient pull of home, the deep genetic memory that connected them to a world they had never seen. The captain looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were good people, dedicated to exploration and peaceful contact. Whatever choice they made would shape not just their own destiny, but the fate of two civilizations. The question that burned in his mind and in the minds of every human who heard that message was simple, yet profound. After 60,000 years among the stars, was it time to go home? 3 days had passed since the message from Earth reached the Wanderer's dream, and the ship buzzed with an energy that Captain Marcus Vorn had never experienced in his 30 years of command. The crew worked with purpose and excitement as they prepared for a journey that would take them across half the galaxy, to a world that existed only in legends and ancient dreams. Navigation Officer Zara Blackstone stood in the ship's archives, surrounded by holographic displays showing star charts that dated back thousands of years. Her fingers traced the ancient routes their ancestors had taken during the Great Exodus, working backward through time and space to plot their return journey. The calculations were complex, requiring her to account for stellar drift, gravitational changes, and the movement of entire star systems over 60 millennia. "The path home isn't going to be easy," she reported to the assembled senior staff. "We're looking at a journey of 18 months through sectors we've never explored. Some of these regions show signs of heavy Zephyrian activity, which could complicate our approach to Earth." Chief Engineer Kai Thornfield emerged from the lower decks with news that had everyone on edge. A tall, broad-shouldered man with calloused hands and keen eyes. Kai had spent the last 3 days exploring sections of their ship that had been sealed since construction. Following the cryptic references in the Earth message about hidden technologies, he had discovered chambers and systems that defied explanation. "Captain, you need to see this," Kai announced, his voice mixture of wonder and concern. The message was right about technological seeds. There are entire sections of our ship that have been dormant for generations. Weapons systems, defensive shields, propulsion enhancements that are centuries ahead of anything we currently use. The discovery sent ripples of unease through the crew. They were explorers and diplomats, not warriors. The Wanderer's dream carried defensive systems suitable for protection against pirates and hostile wildlife, but nothing approaching military-grade weaponry. The idea that their peaceful vessel had been secretly carrying instruments of war for generations challenged their understanding of their own purpose. Lieutenant Commander Jasper Knox raised the question that everyone was thinking. If our ancestors hid these systems in our ships, what did they expect us to find when we return to Earth? What aren't we being told about the situation there? Marcus decided it was time to test the ancient systems. Under Kai's guidance, the engineering team began the careful process of awakening technologies that had slept for 60,000 years. The first activation sent a pulse of energy through the ship's hull, strengthening their shields to levels that their instruments couldn't even measure properly. The second brought online weapon arrays that could crack asteroids with surgical precision. But the most remarkable discovery came when Zara accessed the navigation systems. Hidden within the ship's core computers were detailed maps of the galaxy, updated in real time through some form of quantum communication network that connected every human vessel across the stars. They could see the positions of hundreds of other human ships, scattered across dozens of sectors, all receiving the same call to return home. Communications Officer Thane Morrison worked tirelessly to establish contact with other human vessels in their region of space. The responses varied dramatically. Some ships, like the research vessel Cosmic Harmony under Captain Luna Reeves, immediately committed to joining the journey home. Others, particularly the colony ships that had established successful settlements on distant worlds, chose to remain where they were, wishing their cousins well, but declining to abandon the lives they had built. The most significant response came from the military escort, Iron Resolve, commanded by General Atlas Meridian. Unlike the exploration and research vessels, the Iron Resolve had been designed as a defensive platform, protecting human colonies from hostile alien species. General Meridian brought news that changed their understanding of the situation entirely. Captain Vorn, the general's weathered face appeared on the main screen. "I've been analyzing the data from that Earth transmission, and I've cross-referenced it with intelligence reports from our contacts throughout this sector. The Zephyrians aren't just occupying Earth. They've been expanding their territory steadily for the last 1,000 years. Human colonies on the rim have been reporting increased Zephyrian presence, always peaceful but increasingly assertive about territorial claims. The implications were troubling. If the Zephyrians were expanding their empire and viewed humans as an extinct species, what would happen when they discovered that humanity not only survived, but had built a thriving civilization among the stars? Would they see humans as a threat to be eliminated, or could diplomatic solutions be found? Marcus called for a full crew assembly in the main cargo bay. 200 faces looked up at him, representing the full diversity of human experience. There were scientists and engineers, doctors and teachers, artists and historians. Many had families back in the colonies. All had chosen to follow him on this unprecedented journey, but he owed them complete honesty about what they might face. "We're not just going home," he told them. "We're potentially walking into a situation that could determine the future of our entire species. The Zephyrians have had 60,000 years to establish themselves on Earth. They may not welcome our return, regardless of our historical claims to the world." The response from his crew surprised him. Rather than fear or doubt, he saw determination in their faces. These were people who had spent their lives pushing boundaries, exploring the unknown, and building bridges between different species. The challenge of reclaiming their ancestral home, while maintaining their principles of peaceful coexistence, energized rather than intimidated them. Engineer Kai stood up from among the assembled crew. "Captain, we've spent generations wondering who we really are, where we came from, what our purpose might be. Maybe this is our answer. Maybe we were meant to return home not as conquerors, but as the bridge between two civilizations." As the meeting concluded and the crew dispersed to their duties, Marcus remained in the cargo bay, looking out through the massive viewport at the stars that would guide them home. In 18 months they would reach Earth. What they would find there and what they would become in the process remained to be seen. 18 months of travel through uncharted space had brought the human fleet to the edge of the Sol system, and Captain Marcus Vorn could barely believe what his sensors were showing him. Earth hung before them like a jewel, but it was transformed beyond recognition. Where once there had been blue oceans and green continents, now crystalline structures rose from the surface like frozen lightning, their surfaces pulsing with soft bioluminescent patterns that painted the planet in shades of gold and silver. The human fleet had grown during their journey home. What began as a handful of ships had become a flotilla of 47 vessels, as word spread through the quantum communication network. Research ships, colony transports, even a few commercial freighters had joined their cause, bringing the total human population in the fleet to nearly 10,000 souls. Navigator Zara Blackstone stood at her station, her instrument scanning the transformed homeworld with a mixture of wonder and sadness. "Captain, the continents are still there, but everything else has changed. I can detect massive cities, but they're unlike anything in our databases. The architecture appears to be grown rather than built, like coral formations but made of some kind of crystalline material." From the communications station, Thane Morrison reported increasing activity on all frequencies. "Sir, we're being scanned by at least 30 different detection systems. They know we're here, but so far no attempt at communication." That changed within minutes. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a being that was both beautiful and utterly alien. The Zephyrian who appeared before them stood nearly 8 feet tall, with translucent skin that seemed to contain flowing patterns of light. 4 arms moved with graceful precision, and large, multifaceted eyes regarded the human fleet with what appeared to be curiosity, rather than hostility. "Unknown vessels," the being spoke in perfectly accented standard human. "You have entered the protected space of the Zephyrian Collective. Please identify yourselves and state your purpose in this system." Marcus stepped forward, knowing that the next few minutes could determine the fate of both species. "I am Captain Marcus Vorn of the Human Colonial Federation. We have come home, to Earth, the world of our ancestors." The Zephyrian's expression was difficult to read, but the patterns of light beneath its skin shifted to deeper, more rapid pulses. "Human? That is not possible. The primitive species known as humans vanished from this world over 50,000 of your years ago. They were unable to adapt to the changing conditions and eventually migrated to other regions, where they presumably went extinct. Lieutenant Commander Jasper Knox whispered urgently in Marcus's ear. Captain, they genuinely believe we're extinct. This isn't deception or politics. They actually think humanity died out millennia ago. Marcus chose his words carefully. We didn't go extinct. We went to the stars. We've built a civilization across dozens of worlds, developed technologies, established peaceful relations with hundreds of species. We've come home not as primitives, but as equals. The Zephyrian delegate, who introduced himself as High Curator Vexathara, seemed genuinely puzzled by this revelation. This is most unusual. Our historical records indicate that the human species lacked the technological capability for interstellar travel. How did you accomplish such a feat? From the engineering section, Kai Thornfield had been monitoring the exchange while running deep scans of the planet below. His findings were remarkable. Captain, they've turned Earth into a paradise. The atmosphere is cleaner than it's been in millions of years. The oceans are teeming with life forms I don't recognize. Whatever they've done here, they've healed the planet completely. This created a complex diplomatic situation. The humans had legitimate historical claims to Earth, but the Zephyrians had clearly been excellent stewards of the world, transforming it into something more beautiful and healthy than it had ever been during human occupation. Diplomat Orion Cross, a silver-haired veteran of dozens of first contact situations, stepped forward to address the Zephyrian representative. High Curator, we appreciate what your people have accomplished here. Earth is more beautiful now than our ancestors could have imagined. We don't seek to undo your work or displace your people. We simply wish to return to our ancestral home and find a way for both our species to coexist. The response was not what they expected. Vexthara's pattern shifted to what appeared to be confusion, mixed with something approaching amusement. Coexistence? You speak as though you are our equals, but our scans of your vessels show technology that is perhaps 10,000 years behind our current capabilities. You travel in crude metal ships, while we have mastered organic architecture that grows and adapts. Your weapons are kinetic and energy-based, while we manipulate matter at the quantum level. The condescension in the alien's tone sparked anger among several human crew members, but Marcus kept his composure. This was exactly the kind of situation his diplomatic training had prepared him for, though he had never imagined it would involve humanity's own homeworld. High Curator, Marcus replied calmly. Technological advancement isn't the only measure of a civilization's worth. We've learned to build relationships, to adapt to thousands of different environments, to solve problems through cooperation rather than dominance. Perhaps our technologies are different rather than inferior. But Vexthara had already made his decision. Captain Vorn, while we appreciate your historical claims and acknowledge that your species has survived against expectations, Earth is now the heart of the Zephyrian collective. We have spent 50,000 years transforming this world into the center of our civilization. We cannot simply share it with what amounts to a remnant population of a species we believed extinct. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the human fleet in tense silence. Within hours, Zephyrian vessels began emerging from hidden facilities on Earth's surface and throughout the solar system. They were beautiful ships, grown rather than built, that moved through space like living creatures. Their numbers were impressive, nearly matching the human fleet despite having no advance warning of their arrival. General Atlas Meridian's voice crackled over the fleet communications network. All vessels, this is Atlas. We're being surrounded, but no hostile actions have been taken yet. Maintain defensive positions, but do not fire unless fired upon. This situation isn't over yet. Marcus looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were people who had spent 18 months traveling across the galaxy to reach this moment. Driven by dreams of homecoming and reunion, now they faced the possibility that their homeworld would reject them, that the Zephyrians would never accept their right to return. But in the determined expressions of his crew, Marcus saw something that gave him hope. These were humans, descendants of the species that had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and the challenges of colonizing hostile worlds across the galaxy. They had not come this far to simply turn around and leave. The question now was whether they could find a peaceful solution, or whether humanity would have to fight for their right to come home. The standoff lasted 3 days. 47 human vessels faced 63 Zephyrian ships in the space above Earth, neither side willing to fire the first shot. Captain Marcus Vorn spent those tense hours in constant communication with his fleet commanders, searching for a peaceful solution that seemed increasingly impossible to find. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Commander Nova Sterling, captain of the science vessel Stellar Pioneer, had been quietly analyzing the Zephyrian ships during the standoff. Her background in xenobiology and quantum mechanics had led her to a startling discovery about their opponent's beautiful organic vessels. "Captain," Nova's voice carried excitement and urgency over the fleet communication channel. "I've been studying their ship designs, and I think I understand why they're so confident. Their vessels aren't just grown, they're alive. They're using some form of biotechnology that makes their ship self-repairing and adaptive. But there's a weakness." Marcus leaned forward in his command chair. "What kind of weakness?" "Living systems require specific environmental conditions to function optimally. If we can disrupt those conditions without causing permanent damage, we might be able to disable their fleet without casualties on either side." The plan that emerged was audacious in its complexity and restraint. Rather than using the ancient weapon systems that Kai Thornfield had discovered, the humans would rely on their greatest strength, their adaptability and creative problem-solving. They would use their knowledge of biology, chemistry, and environmental science to create conditions that would force the Zephyrian ships into temporary hibernation. General Atlas Meridian coordinated the tactical aspects of the plan from his flagship Iron Resolve. His military experience proved invaluable in organizing the precise timing required for their strategy to succeed. "All vessels, remember, we're not trying to destroy their ships, we're trying to put them to sleep. This requires surgical precision, not brute force." The battle began when High Curator Vexithara finally lost patience with the diplomatic stalemate. Zephyrian vessels moved forward in perfect formation, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. Energy beams lanced out from their ships, striking the human vessels with power that should have been devastating. Instead, the ancient shield systems that had been hidden in human ships for 60,000 years absorbed the attacks effortlessly. The Zephyrians had developed their weapons to counter the technology of their own era, not the advanced defensive systems that humanity's ancestors had created specifically for this confrontation. Commander Nova Sterling initiated the first phase of the human counterattack. Her science vessel released a cloud of specially designed nanomachines that spread throughout the battle zone. These microscopic devices didn't attack the Zephyrian ships directly. Instead, they began altering the local environment, changing temperature, humidity, and electromagnetic conditions in ways designed to trigger the organic vessel's survival instincts. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Zephyrian ships began to slow their movements, their bioluminescent patterns shifting from aggressive displays to the slower rhythms of defensive postures. Several vessels actually began to retreat toward Earth's atmosphere, seeking the more stable environmental conditions near the planet's surface. Engineer Kai Thornfield coordinated the second phase from the Wanderer's Dream. Human ships began broadcasting specific frequency patterns that interfered with the quantum communication systems the Zephyrians used to coordinate their fleet movements. Without their perfect coordination, the alien formation began to break apart as individual ships struggled to maintain contact with their commanders. But the Zephyrians were not helpless. High Curator Vexithara adapted quickly to the human tactics, ordering his ships to adopt more aggressive individual attack patterns. Several human vessels took serious damage as the aliens demonstrated that their technology, while different, was indeed formidable. The turning point came when Captain Marcus Vorn made a decision that surprised everyone, including his own crew. Instead of pressing their temporary advantage, he ordered the human fleet to cease their environmental attacks and open communication channels to the Zephyrian flagship. "High Curator," Marcus's voice carried clearly across the space between the fleets. "We've demonstrated that we're not the primitives you believed us to be. Our technologies are different from yours, but they're not inferior. We don't want to fight you. We want to come home." Vexthara's image appeared on screens throughout both fleets, his expression showing confusion and something that might have been respect. Your tactics are most unusual, Captain Vorn. You could have destroyed several of our vessels, yet you chose restraint. This is not the behavior we expected from a species seeking to reclaim territory through force. Navigator Zara Blackstone had been monitoring communications between Zephyrian ships during the battle, and her linguistic analysis programs had decoded enough of their language to understand their growing uncertainty. Captain, they're as confused as we are. Their battle doctrine doesn't account for enemies who fight to disable rather than destroy. They don't know how to respond to mercy. The battle's final phase was unlike anything in recorded military history. Instead of escalating to greater destruction, both fleets began a careful dance of demonstration and restraint. Human ships showed their technological capabilities while carefully avoiding lethal force. Zephyrian vessels responded with increasingly precise attacks that damaged human ships without attempting to destroy them. It was a battle fought with the goal of understanding rather than victory, each side trying to gauge the true capabilities and intentions of the other. The Zephyrians began to realize that these returned humans were not the primitive species from their historical records, while the humans demonstrated that 60,000 years of stellar civilization had taught them to value life above territorial conquest. After 6 hours of this strange combat, both fleets withdrew to neutral positions. The immediate crisis had passed, but the fundamental question remained unanswered. Earth hung between them, beautiful and transformed, claimed by two species with legitimate but conflicting rights to call it home. High Curator Vexithara's final transmission of the day carried a tone of grudging respect. Captain Vorn, your people have proven themselves worthy of serious consideration. We propose a formal negotiation to determine how both our species might coexist in this system. But know this, the final decision will require the approval of our highest authorities. As the human fleet settled into defensive positions around the outer planets, Marcus reflected on what they had accomplished. They had proven themselves to the Zephyrians, demonstrated their technological capabilities, and shown their commitment to minimizing casualties. But the hardest part still lay ahead. Now they would have to convince an entire civilization to share the world that both species considered home.